And stuff.
And stuff. All right, here we go. Episode 17.
Man, that's a lot of episodes.
That is a lot of episodes. Let's get us some intro music before we start chatting.
Okay.
Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast, your source for IT news, commentary, and a healthy dose of paranoia. Welcome aboard, Iron Sysadmins.
It's not paranoia if they're actually watching you.
Yeah, and they are. I guarantee it. So, episode 17. I guess we've blown away any chance of having any parallels to any series that's gone on that long.
Well, I mean, you know, if our Dresden guy would hurry up, he's supposed to do 2025. I think it's 25. He said that
25. Yeah, but I mean, there's no way he's going to catch up to us now. We've passed him.
Well, he should write faster.
I think that a lot more work goes into a podcast than writing a novel. So I don't know what his problem is.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So, I mean, come on.
Sounds like laziness to me.
Absolutely.
Anyway, all right.
Time. I have returned the giant Pilsner glass.
And I've got the smaller glass, but it's got yummy beer in it.
Because tonight I'm not drinking a beer that's going to knock me over after just one bottle, so I can have the giant Pilsner glass again.
Lightweight.
Listen, that finally legal was
wonderful.
You should know.
Wonderful.
Yes, wonderful is the word. I think I still have one in my fridge.
Why haven't you drank it yet?
Because I have not had the proper occasion to drink it yet.
What do you call this?
I call this an occasion to drink this awesome hazelnut brown that I have here.
Okay.
Which is very good.
I got the Whiz Bang tonight.
Which is
new. It's very hot.
Which attempted to cover you in beer suds when you opened it.
No, when I poured it.
When you poured it. All right. So I guess we'll get right into the news, huh?
We should.
What do we got? So maybe you've heard about this like NSA leak thing.
Did they call a plumber?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe they should have.
When things leak, I call plumbers.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. That's a very good point.
All right, solve that problem. Next.
Yeah. So I think you put this article in here. You want to? Did you have something in mind?
Well, sure. So there are more NSA. Well, because of the NSA, Microsoft is patching more bugs in various versions of Windows, including Windows XP.
Listen, It's not because of the NSA. It's because of
Windows XP is coming out of retirement. You can reinstall it. You can use that OS again.
Sounds good to me.
So
I loved XP, man. That was an awesome operating system.
Yeah. Well, I beta tested. I'm biased. But it was Windows XP is getting an out of end of life patch.
So get all your MRI machines out and apply the new patches.
Yeah, and that's probably
or whatever's left.
That's probably the reason there's all that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, when you get a serious enough bug, it's in Microsoft's benefit or Microsoft's best interests to keep these things online. Otherwise, even though the operating system is end of life, it's just going to further chip away at their reputation as a software vendor. So I can understand why they're doing it, but if they keep doing it, no one's ever going to get rid of their XP boxes.
Yeah, so this was mostly in there just because it was a, hey, look there.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
doing
Hey, look,
XP again.
there's more nastiness came out of this, and more patches.
Yep. It's all about the patching these days.
Yep.
All right. So,
both of us keep hitting our mics tonight. I heard you do it now.
Yeah. So if you run any version of Windows, go patch your boxes. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
That seems to be a pretty good thing to live by anyway. If you're running Windows, if you're running anything, patch your boxes.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Sure. Otherwise, things are going to just break.
All right. I'm going to sit back and let you rant now.
Moving along. All right. So, something in my earphone is making my ear itch. Sorry. Okay. So you've heard of this Android phone company? Not even. This electronics manufacturer called Samsung, who happens to be making very popular Android phones, named after this thing that we all live in called the Galaxy. And then an S for some reason, probably because Apple used it. And then a number, like the number 8. Apparently, with the Galaxy S8, Samsung is further destroying, in my opinion, the Android UI by getting rid of the navigation bar. Now, if I understand this correctly, that's this thing down at the bottom that lets you go like forward and backward and home, because they replace it with like capacitive keys that are physical on the bottom of the phone. Which is all well and good. All right, whatever. You've got a dedicated place for your buttons. But with the S7 that I had, man, there were a lot of apps that did not work well with that, because the whole reason that navigation bar is part of the display is because it's dynamic. When you make that a bunch of capacitive keys that can't change, it really messes with the flow of a lot of applications. So this article's mainly about all of the changes that are coming with the latest release for the Galaxy S8. But when I read the headline regarding this navigation bar, it really sort of set me off because of my experience with that S7 and some other Samsung Android devices that I've worked with. I just really don't like the way Samsung is very popular and how they just trample all over Android. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about this? I know you're not exactly an Android guy, but you have had to deal with some Samsung Android devices, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm just not an Android guy. I mean, part of me likes the ability to make changes to certain things in the OS, and the other part of me is glad that for at least the important bits like navigation bars, Apple kind of forces you to use their implementation, because that means all the apps work.
Yeah, so I mean, imagine in this strange world where Apple released iOS for other hardware manufacturers to run it on their devices. I know that's probably never going to happen, but just humor me for a second. And then imagine that one of the other hardware manufacturers changed a core piece of the UI, like where the navigation bar is, or where that center button is that you press to go home. What if they change that to something that does sort of the same thing, but doesn't do it quite the same way as your iOS or as your actual iPhone does? How many apps are going to just completely break because of that? Because they expect it to be a certain way.
Yeah. I mean, so Apple has opened up some of the UI, some of the application interactions to other to third parties to be able to make changes, but they're still very strict on what can and can't happen. So, I don't know. I like the experience. It just seems to work for me.
Right. I'm just saying. Imagine if Apple wasn't controlling the hardware.
Right.
And other hardware vendors decided they were going to get crafty and change the way that the UI worked.
Right.
Without
I mean, I've tried Android. I've tried a couple different types. I've done, your HTC, Samsung, LG. And I mean, that sort of is one of the bigger turnoffs to me, is that somebody hands me an Android device, there's no guarantee I'm going to have a clue how to use it. Because they're all different. They all have their own overlays. They all have their own, special little interfaces. And I mean, the way Samsung is moving, they're going to have pretty much their own OS.
It's getting there. It's definitely getting there.
So it's probably, stock Android, I don't necessarily like either. It's never felt right to me. It never has I don't know, for whatever reason, when I use an Apple iPhone or an iPad, it just, the feel of the device just works. I never got that with an Android. Some of the newer ones with the faster processors are sort of getting there, but then, my other complaint about Android is, if I buy a device, I expect that device to work for at least, a year and a half, 2 years, and get upgrades the whole time.
Yeah.
Now I can.
And that one thing that Samsung does seem to do well is they will support one of their devices for a decent amount of time. I mean, I think you can probably get a good 2 years out of a Samsung device. But yeah, there are definitely manufacturers out there that release a device, and depending on how well it's sold, they'll just stop updating it.
Yep.
And it's very frustrating. In fact, I have a Dell Android tablet that I bought a year and a half ago or so. It's stuck at Android 5, I think, because Dell abandoned it almost immediately.
Yeah.
They just here's an Android tablet. It's cool. It has this cool camera on it. It does this cool thing. But we're never really going to make the camera do what it could do, and we're not going to give you updates anymore.
Right. Some manufacturers are getting a little bit better with it, but for the most part, it's, they kind of move on. And I get it. They're pumping out these things left, right, and sideways. They've got like a 3 to 6 month cycle for a new phone.
Yeah.
And it's, it's difficult to manage that many devices. But maybe that's part of the problem.
Now, I'll say that my Pixel is doing pretty well. I mean, I genuinely enjoy using the thing. I have run into very few frustrating points. Usually after 6 months with a phone or so, you start to notice all the things that don't quite work the way you want. And maybe you don't get that with your Apple devices since you love them so much.
But
every Android device that I've owned, I have found problems with it within the first couple of months. Some of them you could live with, some of them you couldn't. But so far, the Pixel, which I've had since November of last year, I'm really enjoying the thing, and it's working well. It's not lagging down like most phones do after you start getting some software on them. I'm getting quick updates right from Google. The thing just works. I haven't mucked around with it like I had a habit of doing with all my other phones.
Maybe that's why it works.
Maybe that's it. That's it. I left my hands off of it. All right.
Speaking of mucking around with your device.
Speaking of mucking around with your device, in our next article from Vice, so you've owned a number of Apple devices.
Yes.
When's the last time you tried to take one apart?
I did a couple iMacs recently, so not that long ago. They were older iMacs. I mean, I don't have a new one, but
yeah, I have an old 2008 MacBook Pro. In fact, it's right here. Sorry about that.
Bang 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 bang.
With all my cool hacker stickers.
Yeah, I've taken several of those apart.
Yeah. So this one I've taken apart. This was. Hang on, let me put it away and get back to my mic. This was one of the first years that you could still, or that the battery was supposedly not removable. Well, I've got a spare battery for it right here that I ripped out of another one. Yeah, but you needed a special safety tool or whatever. Man, I'm just beating up this mic tonight. Sorry, guys.
Isn't it like a star wrench or something?
It's like this 3-pronged Phillips.
Oh, okay.
It was weird. It turned out that with a flat-headed screwdriver, as with most security bits, with a flat-headed screwdriver of the right size, you could get them out.
Yep.
But anyway, that was, I think, a 2008 or 2009 model. I have a newer MacBook Pro for work. I don't know that you can open it.
The 20
It's a 2015, I think, that I've got.
I think it was 2012 and on. You can open them. So the back covers do actually come off, but there's very few user serviceable parts in there. So there's and I don't know I'm not sure about the new ones, but the batteries were actually sort of formed. It's not a battery pack anymore. They're like these cells that are kind of all over the place. The hard drive is no longer a hard drive. It's all flash. So it's literally flash memory that's kind of soldered all over the place.
Oh, really? It's not even like a module. You can't remove it at all.
Not the original models, no. Like I said, I haven't looked lately. The memory was not replaced. So I mean, there wasn't much in the way of replacing anything in them. So the rule of thumb, at least that I've been following, is that if I need a new machine, then I need to get, what I need, because you're not going to be able to change it later. So
so I mean, I don't know about you, but I've always played the game of I'll buy what I can afford now, and then in 6 months when I can afford memory, I'll put more in, and in a year when I can afford a terabyte hard drive or whatever, I'll go put that in. Right. Seems like more and more that's not a possibility with a lot of these newer devices. And to get back to the article, I mean, I basically threw this article in here as a talking point for this particular subject, but the article is talking about how people want to be able to repair their devices. And then, of course, they're targeting Apple because Apple is the most noticeable player in that field. We make devices. We don't think you should be able to modify them. We don't think you should be able to repair them. But by the way, they're going to be $3,000. And when they're broken, you're going to have to bring them back to us. And if you can't afford to fix it, sorry, throw it away.
Right.
Which is, in my opinion, absolutely terrible way of doing business. But so many people are falling right into it and they don't care. And I don't know if that's because society isn't all about do it yourself anymore like it used to be. I mean,
well,
am I wrong?
There's trade-offs. So I'm looking at the iFixit teardown right now, the latest MacBook. And everything is all soldered to the logic board. So you can't, once you buy it, you're done. But I mean, the trade-off.
I've got a soldering iron. Here's your $3,000 laptop. Desolder some chips.
So the trade-off, as far as like I see, the trade-off is basically if I want a device that is as light and portable as possible with as much hardware as I can in it, you can't make these devices so that they're user serviceable. I mean,
that's kind of another point though. How thin does your laptop have to be? Like for someone like you and I, right? I'm sure. Yeah, there's people that travel a lot, or people that are on the go, or people that are carrying their laptop with them everywhere they go. Yeah, they probably want the lightest, thinnest thing they can get a hold of, and that's fine. Have a model for that.
Sure. I mean, I travel multiple days a week with my laptop, so I don't care about carrying a big backpack on me either. But
I mean, I would happily exchange a slightly thicker, slightly heavier laptop for the thin, sleek laptop if I knew that I could upgrade it, or that I could repair it, or that I freaking had USB ports on it.
But even if you go back, say you go back to the quote good old days where you could modify laptops, with the exception of the completely obnoxious gaming laptops that you can actually put half height ISA cards and PCI cards and stuff in.
Right.
Ignoring that, because that's not a laptop. Sorry.
That's a portable desktop.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a desktop in a very small case.
If you plug your laptop in and the lights dim.
Yeah, right. I've seen laptops like that.
But even back then, at most you could usually change the RAM and the hard drive, and that was about it.
Well, it depends on how comfortable you were with tearing things apart. There were a lot of components you could replace. Memory, hard drive, those are the common ones that you're going to want to upgrade. Yeah, CPU, video card, whatever.
They're almost impossible to replace.
you probably can't upgrade those sort of things.
Right.
Now, I have seen some laptops, especially some older ones, where they had optional graphics cards. You had a couple different options when you ordered the thing.
Right.
So you could, depending on how they designed the thing, that video card was modular, and you could just swap in one for the other. Or, the video card was at least removable, so you could replace it. Even if there was nothing to upgrade to, you could at least replace it if it went bad.
Yep.
Right. And nowadays, more and more, I mean, even in the PC market, I haven't torn apart the Dell laptop that I use for personal use, but I have taken the cover off of it once just because Windows had hung up on the thing so badly that I couldn't power it off. Right. Like I couldn't even hold the power button, the good old trick. I had to literally take the back panel off of or the bottom panel off of the thing, find the lead that comes from the non-removable battery and pull it.
Right.
So I don't know that I've ever seen that happen to a MacBook, but it did happen to that PC, and I was happy to be able to at least pull that cover off. If that were some solid case that it wasn't easy to remove, in this case there was like 6 screws to take out, and at least the panel came off.
Right.
But more and more they're moving toward these sleek cases that if there's any seam on the thing, they lose, with how thin they can make the case.
Well, there's got to be a way to get into them. So, but a lot of this, I mean, they do mention the new Mac Pro in here, and that the CPU and the RAM is upgradable in it. I think part of it is that people just don't do this. I mean, yeah, me and you do, but your average user doesn't upgrade this stuff. But a lot of what's in this article is about phones, and
yeah.
They kind of pick on Apple with this, but
like I said, they're the big player in the.
No, I get that, but I have tried unsuccessfully to replace the screen on a Samsung, and to replace their screen on a I don't even know what it was, some off-brand whatever. This is not an easy task. Like. And I don't know if you tried this, but you have to heat the phones up to separate the glass from the LCD, and I've heard crazy.
Yeah,
it's not something you can do easily at home.
Now, depending on the phone, you can actually buy like the frame of the phone, the outer chassis of the phone, which includes the case, or includes not the case but the screen, for a little more money than just the screen, and then you transfer the guts of the phone over. So I haven't done that myself, but I know someone who's in the process of doing it because they cracked their screen.
The 2 phones that I had that had screen problems that we had to do this with, to buy that was about $50 less than purchasing a brand new phone.
Wow.
So it was pointless.
I mean, I guess it depends on the age of your phone, the manufacturer, and how it was put together, obviously. If there's a lot of things that depend on that outer frame or that outer chassis, then the more stuff they have to build into that chassis, the more it's going to cost.
You're always going to have people who want to tinker with things and whatnot. But I mean, a lot of the stuff is way more advanced than your average tinkerer. And even in a phone, there's maybe you can replace the screen if you're lucky.
Yeah. Now I had
a whole lot you can do.
And you probably remember this story. A coworker had a Galaxy or what they call it, the Galaxy Nexus or Nexus.
Yeah, the one that went for a dive.
Yeah, the one that took a little swim. He had gotten it was when Samsung was making Google's Nexus device. It was the Galaxy Nexus, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the Galaxy Nexus.
Yeah, so he dropped it in some water and couldn't get it to power back up, and didn't have insurance on the phone, so he just put down the money and bought himself a different one. And months had gone by, and this thing was just laying on his desk. And I asked him one day, like, hey, can I tinker with that, see if I can get it to work? And I actually pulled the whole thing apart, took all the different modules that were disconnectable, disconnected them, cleaned up the contacts and whatever, put it all back together, and sure enough, I got the thing to come back up. I got it to start back up.
Yep.
And I gave him a couple bucks for it, and I had myself a phone. I used that phone for like 2 years. It smelled like Clorox because of where he dropped it and what he did to sanitize it afterward.
Yeah, but it worked.
But it worked, and I got myself out of an older phone that I didn't like and into a better one. But my point is that I was able to do that, and I didn't think it was that difficult. Sure, I wouldn't have handed it to someone who's never taken a device apart before and expected them to do it. But
right, but I mean that's my point. So if you have a choice between building for an audience that wants to be able to tinker and take it apart and upgrade and everything else, or building something lighter and more compact for an audience that is never going to upgrade anything in it, just they're going to buy it, they're going to use it, and when it's old and or too slow for them, they're just going to get a new one.
Yeah, but that
latter audience is much larger.
The point I'm trying to get across is that more and more it feels like vendors like Apple, not necessarily only Apple, are moving us in a direction where here's your electronics, don't think about opening them. I mean, there's even been cases where they tried to pass legislation that say you're not allowed to tinker with your device.
Well, I don't know that I agree with that. Right. I mean,
but
you want to tinker with it, tinker with it.
So the vendor, I mean, using Apple as an example, whether they want to push whether it's legal or not for you to open the thing, they've designed the thing so it's more difficult for you to open and maintain and work with. And then, I mean, I don't know how well or how easy it is to get an Apple repaired or how expensive it gets as they get older. But if you've got a laptop that's 2 or 3 years old, and I mean, I'll get 5-6 years out of a laptop if I'm able to repair components that fail, right? As that MacBook gets older and older and older, if I can't replace the components, I'm going to have to take it to Apple to get things repaired. And if they want to charge me a whole lot of money to repair it, all of a sudden my device gets less and less useful.
Right.
Right. So that really expensive laptop up front, which was awesome on day one, after 4 or 5 years, while it may still have life in it, is now garbage because Apple wants to charge me a lot of money to repair it. Right. So I don't know, maybe call it just me being stodgy. I don't care, but I feel like the whole idea that, well, most people aren't going to want to open it, so we're not going to let them open it. We're going to design it so that the guys who can open it can't. Like I don't know, the whole movement. Again, I keep picking on Apple. It's not just Apple. I've seen Dells that are like this. I've seen mobile devices that are like this. I've seen larger laptop-esque tablet-style devices that are like this.
Right.
I mean, I know a guy who bought a laptop that had, I can't remember the details now, had like a BIOS problem or something that he just couldn't fix it because the laptop was designed in such a way that he couldn't fix the thing. And after like a year and a half, the thing was useless. It was out of warranty. He couldn't get it replaced without a huge repair bill. So now it's just like a doorstop. Anyway, I think we've beaten this one to death.
All right. So it's time to make somebody else cry.
Yeah. So remember that WannaCry thing? There's this new. I don't want to call it a variant because it's completely different. People are calling it Samba Cry, but from what I understand here, it's. I think we talked about the Samba bug. Was it last time we recorded? The one where you could that arbitrary code execution.
Yeah.
So supposedly leveraging that, I think. It's hard to say because the article doesn't give me a whole lot of details. It's from Frostbites, so you think they'd give us more details, but whatever. Apparently there's this new, I guess you could call it a worm, that's spreading around that people are calling Samba Cry, even though it's not ransomware. And it's not based on WCry, right? I guess it's just buzzwords. The thing I thought was...
It seems to be really weird because reading through this, it's called Samba Cry, but doesn't necessarily take advantage of Samba. It's actually scanning for Raspberry Pi devices.
Right. So it's hitting Raspberry Pi devices, and it's actually connecting over SSH, I guess. Now that I'm reading about it, it's actually going through default passwords on Raspberry Pis, which of course anyone who's used a Raspberry Pi knows the Pi user has a default password of Raspberry. Sorry, did I just let out a secret that no one should know?
I don't know, but newer Raspberry Pi. I thought the newer versions of Raspberry Pi or the OS have
the newer versions of Raspbian.
Raspbian, yes, Raspbian has SSH disabled by default now.
Yeah, but of course you turn that right back on again.
Well, yeah,
if you're going to use the thing. So anyway, the point is, what I thought was so cool about this was they're not crypto lockering your device. They're not ransoming your device. They're using it to mine cryptocurrency.
Yep.
They're using an army of Raspberry Pis that they've infected with their malware to mine cryptocurrency. I think that's hilarious. This is the best use of a worm I've ever seen, I think.
Oh, it's not new. Others have done this, but
just cut out the middleman. Don't demand that the person you've infected pay you, because then there's all kinds of stuff you got to deal with, like letting them unlock their machines and keeping track of who's paid you and who hasn't. Just make their device make you money.
Yeah. Yep. So
imagine if they were doing this to devices other than Raspberry Pis. Imagine if they were hitting like actual powerful servers.
Well, yeah, but finding a default password for those is harder.
Yeah, well, okay, so imagine if, based on the name, they were actually using that Samba vulnerability to do it.
Yeah, it's possible.
I think it'd be better than just depending on Raspberry Pis, but, whatever. Hey, stop that. There was that ad I told you about. You probably didn't hear it.
No, and the ad didn't even run in my...
I'm sure it made it to the recording. I'm sorry, guys, for that ad that just played. It's an ad for Uber, if you care.
I'm sorry. We should have better production values here, but he's been drinking,
and I will continue to drink because that's
until morale
what I like to do on a Monday night.
All right, back to bashing Apple.
Yeah, well, this isn't quite Apple's fault. So, I mean, it's Apple's vendors, I suppose.
So police have busted, I guess this would be Chinese authorities. More than a dozen individuals have been arrested by Chinese authorities on suspicion of selling Apple customers' personal account information.
It's kind of a big deal, huh?
To the tune of 50 million won, which is about $7.3 million.
I didn't know what a won was.
That's a Chinese dollar.
Oh, I thought that was like yen. Or is that Japanese? I'm so uncultured. I'm sorry.
I think Japanese is... I don't remember. I should know this.
You should. You work in like finance or something. Not me. I work in education.
Yes. Japan uses the yen.
Okay.
Thank you, Google. I mean, I knew that.
You totally knew that. So 50 million won, which is like $7.36 million.
Yes. Yep. So
that's in the article. I didn't have to look that up at all.
Yeah. Should just said you knew it off the top of your head and lie a little.
I totally knew that off the top of my head. Those currency conversions for that currency I didn't know existed. Yeah. That's believable.
So Apple worked with authorities to bust them, etc. And this will fit in a little bit with
yes,
our main topic, but just because you brought your device to a authorized dealer does not mean that your data is protected. So in this case, it was suppliers, which is sort of one step removed from Apple.
Right.
I guess last year was actually Apple employees. 4 staffers in Australia fired after being accused of sharing nude images from customers' phones and rating them and then rating them.
Well, I mean, I guess there's that stupid ad again. Stop it. I'm going to close this thing before it plays again. Sorry, guys.
Mine isn't playing. I don't know.
Yeah, mine just played twice.
Weird.
So anyway, yeah. Now that I've closed the article, I can't look. Does it say how many users, like, who should possibly expect that their data has been leaked?
It does not. It's not what I'm seeing. Apple IDs, customer names, mobile numbers, and they haven't revealed if it's only China-based customers or international customers. They haven't. But there's nothing in here saying whether it was who or what was many or nothing.
I should have followed up on this because I found this article a good week and a half ago. There could be more details that we don't know yet because I haven't tried to look. Sorry.
There's those production values again. Sorry, guys.
Listen. Someday when we have like a production team other than me, maybe we'll have higher production values.
Let's see.
All right. So are you still looking for that?
I was looking real quick. All the stuff that I see. Let's see. This one says it's only China customers. Yeah, it looks like it was only China customers. So if you're in China and listening to our podcast, your data, and you have an Apple, your data may have been stolen. Sorry.
Maybe. All right. So we've saved the best for last.
Panic.
So earlier today, and I think that this is literally just today that this came out, and I'm honestly very surprised because I saw no panic at all day long. It wasn't until I was at home relaxing and pulled up my RSS reader on my phone to try to see what had happened during the day, because, during the day I was busy working and not reading news articles, that I found out that there is a new vulnerability in like everything Unix and Linux for the past 15 years. And they're calling it Stack Clash. So what this comes down to is privilege escalation via a Stack Overflow.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, it's a Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
Big surprise.
So I guess this one's a little more creative than just a Stack Overflow. It has to do with like how were you trying to describe this before? It's like two Stack Overflows that have.
Yeah, the way they were sort of explaining it is that you had. It doesn't really make sense though. Oh no, it's just it's a straight up Stack Overflow. It's not what I thought it was. So it's literally just a Stack Overflow. So Linux has a stack guard page, which is supposed to protect from this, which was put in somewhere around 2010. And turns out that's not very effective.
That's a shame.
Well, you can still do this.
It is a shame, really, because this means that the next couple of weeks is going to be a nightmare for me because I have several hundred Linux servers that are now vulnerable to something new.
Right.
I hadn't even patched all of the low-hanging fruit from the last major exploit in the kernel.
So as with most Linux exploits, you have to have a local account in order to take advantage of this. So you have to be running something with local privileges, and then you can escalate to root privileges. Now, yes, web browser, pretty much anything you run on a Linux box is running as a user. Everything you run on a Linux box is running as a user. So if you can take advantage of one of those programs, you can gain local and then root privileges.
Yeah, so basically you have to chain attacks. You have to figure out you have to, from a user perspective, you'd have to figure out how to compromise their browser or I don't know, their media player or whatever. What was that one we just saw recently from like VLC? Right? Through the subtitles on foreign films.
Oh, yeah, something like that. So the reason that you don't see a lot of, people running around with their hands up in the air screaming fire is because you need a local account. So in order to take advantage of this, you have to have a second piece of software that has an exploit in it that allows you to gain local privileges.
But I mean, every service that runs on a Linux box is also running as a local user.
Yes.
So if you find an exploit in Apache or remote code execution in PHP or,
Yep.
I think Exim was the example they used in this article because one question was, how can I get started trying to figure out how to make this work? And they said, look at Exim on i386. Apparently an older version of Exim has this vulnerability, and it's easy enough to exploit that you can use it as a proof of concept. So it's like... There's a heading that says something
No. It says remote exploitation is not excluded. And it said the one remote application we did investigate, the Exim mail server, turned out to be unexploitable by Sherlock. So I guess it wasn't exploitable for whatever.
Well, this here, it says, I want to write my own stack clash exploit. Where do I start? It says you should try to implement a local root exploit against Exim on i386 Debian.
Right. I wonder if they just have a... I don't know. Previously, it's earlier under is it exploitable remotely? It says it's not exploitable, or it's unexploitable. So
interesting. Well, I mean, I'm still going to say like unexploitable is a pretty definitive word, and I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that any service running on a Linux or Unix box is running as a user, and if you can find a way to exploit a service and run local code, then you could probably chain this exploit and get root. And that's scary stuff.
Right. So this was apparently a coordinated release. This advisory, they've known about it for a couple of weeks. So patches should already be out there.
They said back in May, vendors were notified, and they started working with vendors to try to come up with patches. Supposedly, I haven't had a chance. I was going to go look and see if I could find a Red Hat article on this, because that's usually a good place to start for information on these things. But I just didn't get the chance to go and find it before we recorded tonight. Because, like I said, I literally was reading about this like an hour or two before we recorded.
So, all of you sysadmins and Linux users who were laughing hysterically at our first article about how there's a million updates for Microsoft.
Go patch your stuff.
You can go patch too.
Yeah, you've got homework too now, not just the poor XP admins. All right. I guess that covers the news. So I've got one announcement, and that is that I have ordered stickers for the podcast, but they haven't arrived yet. Otherwise, I'd be showing them to you right now.
I didn't even know about the stickers.
Yeah, you didn't, because I was like, hey, I've got about $10 in the Patreon account. I'm going to see if I can get a first run of some stickers. So I basically took our logo that I have on social media and whatnot, and I sent it to Sticker U, I think was the name of the company. It was mainly because I could easily just give them my artwork and get it printed online. So supposedly a sheet of 20 of these stickers is on its way to me, shipped out like the end of last week. I was hoping it'd be here before the show tonight. But once we get them, what I'm hoping to do is, assuming they look okay, I was going to offer them to our Patreon donors, because they've already given us money. And depending on, again, how they look, I'm probably going to offer them up as a Patreon reward if you give more than like $5 a month or something. So we can review exactly what that is once I finally get the stickers.
Do I get a sticker?
Yeah, I'll get you a sticker.
Oh, good.
Yeah. being the co-host of the show, you're entitled to a sticker.
Well, I wasn't sure, so I figured I'd ask.
They should be 2-inch by 2-inch square stickers. They should be fine for like the back of your laptop or back window of your car or whatever you want to do with them. So we'll see what quality they are and if I'm going to stick with that company or not.
We should get challenge coins too. I like challenge coins.
You mentioned that we should have challenge coins before DerbyCon, and that you were going to look into challenge coins. Did you look into challenge coins yet?
I've looked into challenge coins for the B-Sides event that I'm on the board of. They're not overly expensive. So
where's the challenge coins?
Okay. There's looking into what it would cost to get a challenge coin. And then there's having a challenge coin designed. Now, I'm good at part A. If you would like a stick figure that looks like it was drawn by a newborn, I can totally accomplish part B.
You need to put zombies on them.
So yeah, we're gonna need an artist. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're an artist and you want to design our coin.
So I mean, if push came to shove, I could probably design something for a challenge coin. I don't know what exactly is demanded of artistry for a challenge coin, but
it's got to be pretty badass. Challenge coins have to.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely, it has to be the best challenge coin ever. Otherwise, we're not going to give it out. Right.
So you got to have like, I don't know. There's got to be some iron in there and some Sysadmin and probably some America.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking that the logo that we have already won't translate well to a challenge coin.
Thinking like a guy with a keyboard in one hand and an AK-47 in the other.
Yeah, there we go. Maybe a sword. A sword and a keyboard.
Well, it's Iron Sysadmin, so I mean, we can go with like, medieval.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We'll figure it out. If you have ideas, just email us at the email address that Nate is about to give you.
That would totally be podcast@ironsysadmin.com. That'll go to both of us. So you can send us all of your hate mail and challenge coin design ideas.
I mean, sure, send us hate mail. That's fun to read. We'll read your hate mail on the air.
We might. Speaking of which, reviews are awesome, and we haven't gotten one in a long time, and I'd love to get more reviews. So go review us wherever the heck you want to review us.
Good, bad, and different.
Like
bad reviews are okay.
Comments on YouTube or iTunes or Stitcher or wherever the heck is convenient for you. Just send us an email. I don't care.
Never read the YouTube comments.
Never read the YouTube comments?
Never read the YouTube comments.
Okay, I won't. So, anyway,
comment elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't care if it's good or bad. I'd like to hear from people. Like people that have actually listened to the show, not just random people who want to make us feel like we're trash.
He's tired of hearing from me.
Well, I mean, I can mute you if I wanted to.
Hey, you didn't tell him about the new URL you made?
I was getting there.
Oh,
I was getting there. I thought, we'd go through.
Burst your bubble.
I thought we'd go through and see if we had anything cool going on first. You got anything cool going on?
I have a ton of cool stuff going on that I can't talk about.
Can you talk about them in a very abstract way?
I have a lot of really awesome projects I'm working on.
They're just awesome. That's as abstract as it gets. Huh? They're awesome.
Yeah, I can't. No. Loose lips, sink ships, and all that.
Yeah, right.
What else is going on?
You and your New York startup life.
Yeah, startups are fun. I don't know. I got a new toy for my computer.
Yeah.
I travel with my laptop, so I'm constantly disconnecting it and reconnecting it, disconnecting it and reconnecting it. And at this point, with all of the various monitors and attachments that I have, I pretty much disconnect and reconnect every single port on the laptop every time I move it.
Yeah. So
I got a dock.
Did you get a little port replicator thing?
Yeah, I got a Thunderbolt 2 dock.
That's cool.
So far, I've been able to add another monitor.
Because you need more monitors.
Yep. So I got another monitor in here.
You need all the monitors.
But I've been able to everything plugs into that, and I only have a couple cables now that I have to move, which is neat.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I actually just coincidentally, I had no idea you were in the market for a Thunderbolt dock. I also recently got a Thunderbolt dock for work. Mainly because I have that MacBook Pro, which I run Fedora on, or at least I was running Fedora on, but there was a problem. I also have the Apple Cinema display.
Yeah.
With the port replicator built in. And the main reason that I really wanted the Thunderbolt display when they got me the laptop was because of the port replicator. I wanted something that was stationary, that had an Ethernet port with a MAC address, that was relatively easy to just like stay on my desk and not be a little dongle that I could easily drop out of my laptop bag. The problem was docking and undocking when running Fedora was practically a nightmare. Yeah, you have a dongle that you're showing us.
They're sizable.
Yeah, but they're easy to lose.
Okay.
Well, okay, so look at it from my perspective, right? I mean, you're familiar with how the network worked at the college, right? Yeah. So that dongle you were holding up is more than just a dongle. It's a whole network adapter. It's got a MAC address associated to it.
Yep.
Right? So that MAC address identifies, at least partially, me and gives me my static IP address.
Yep.
Right? Which allows me access to lots of stuff at the college.
Yep.
As an administrator. Right? So I wasn't comfortable having my static IP address assigned to a device that is like the size of a pen that I could drop and lose or get confused with somebody else's or something.
Does the MAC address follow the dongle?
Yes.
You've tested this?
Yes.
Oh, neat. I did not know that.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted the Thunderbolt display because it was not as easy to just pick up and walk off with.
Right.
Right. But because of the docking problems, I ended up dropping Fedora and going back to Mac OS because it seamlessly docked and undocked, and I could pick up the laptop and walk off to a meeting if I wanted to. The problem was I really hate Mac OS. And I just couldn't, I got so tired of some of the little things that annoy me about Mac OS that I wanted to go back to Fedora. So when I did, I got a Thunderbolt dock to replace the cinema display. And while I do miss that beautiful display, I do not miss the hassles that I had docking and undocking. I can now undock my Fedora machine, close the lid, stuff it in my laptop bag, and walk off to a meeting and open it back up, and it actually work.
Right.
So it's a huge benefit. So now I've got an Apple Cinema display sitting on my desk doing nothing, and it really makes me cry whenever I see that display dark, because it really is a beautiful display.
If you don't want it, I mean, I'm happy to take it off your hands.
I think the college would notice if I just gave it to you.
Have they noticed that you're not using it?
I don't think they've noticed I'm not using it.
See, you could just bring it to my house. And if they ever say like, oh, what happened to the display? Just let me know and I'll bring it back.
They may notice that it's gone. Especially since some of them might listen to the show. So in a couple days, I'll probably expect someone to come by and say, hey, you're not using that display anymore, huh? I heard on the show.
Yeah.
Can we have that back?
Maybe.
Yeah, right.
And you say, no, I'm working on getting it working with Linux.
Yeah, I'm totally going to make it work.
So, alrighty. How about we talk about privacy and private stuff?
Privacy and private stuff. All right. So I'm not even going to candy coat this. This literally came as a direct result. Like the idea came to me as a direct result of some conversations we're having at the college around the level of access that me and the other male administrators have and what we can and can't do with that access.
Do tell.
Well, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it basically it comes down to there are cases where, like say in the case of a compromised account.
Yep.
Where we will view, I don't want to say someone's mail, but we'll view a large portion of their account and their settings so that we can verify that once the account was compromised, there were no settings changed, or if there were settings changed, we can change them back, right? So the discussion has come up, like, is that okay? Should we be doing that? Because there is a policy in place that says what we should and shouldn't be doing. And it's a little gray as far as whether it's cool for us to like actually access mail as a given user in order, even if it is to protect their data.
Well,
so you can see how this is kind of sticky, right?
Right. So I have access to, well, everything. I'm a sysadmin. I have
exactly.
You know, we have certain things in place. So some of the systems I'm not, by law, I'm not allowed to have access to the front end because I have access to the back end.
Yeah.
But I have access to the back end. So, I mean, if you think about it, I can do whatever I want anyway. As a matter of fact, I can probably do more from the back end and not leave any tracks than I could from the front end.
Absolutely.
So I mean, some of these laws are a little goofy. Now, to that end, I also put a lot of stuff in place to leave lots and lots and lots of tracks. I mean, for not just for insider stuff. I mean, this works for if somebody breaks in and.
But you, being the guy who put them there, could probably get around them if you really wanted to do something nefarious.
Probably. I mean, there's always a way around stuff. Yeah. I've made it pretty difficult, but yes, there are ways around things.
There always is. Especially if you know where the tripwires are.
Well, the only way around these particular pieces, as far as I know, and I've done enough research to know this is like a best practice, but as far as I can tell, the only way to disable this is to reboot the server, which someone would probably notice. Now I could disable the alerts. I mean, it would be a very, very, very long, sophisticated, extremely detailed attack in order to do it. But I mean, like I said, it could be done. But my goal, especially because I'm in finance and dealing with more money than I'll ever have, is to make sure that if anything does happen, there are logs up the wazoo to prove that it wasn't me. As long as it wasn't me, I'm okay.
Right. That's the important thing, right?
So, yeah, I mean, I theoretically I've never actually tried it, but I theoretically have access to everybody's email. I have access to all the files because, I pretty much have access to everything because all of the desktops are nothing. You're not supposed to be storing anything on the desktops.
Well, so I mean, here's what it comes down to. If you're the guy that set it up, or if you're the guy that administers it, you've got access.
Right.
I mean, even in cases where you've tried to limit your own access or lock yourself out of things, you're the guy who set the lock. You're the guy with the key.
Right.
Right? Sure. So we sort of started the rabbit trail already, but I guess what I wanted to cover was, as a sysadmin, as the guy who set the lock, whether you're trying to keep yourself out of the data or not, you have access to things that general employees should not.
Right.
Right. So I guess it comes down to what's the proper way to deal with that.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of the way I've always treated it. Right. So, yeah, I can access any file share on campus, including payroll data or, whatever, right? I have no reason to, because, I don't really care what everybody else makes, for example. I don't care about the human resources documentation on all of my coworkers. It's just, I don't have any motivation to go and look at those things. And aside from that, I know it's wrong.
So, morals and ethics?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah. So
same problem. I don't.
No one seems to have a certification that covers morals and ethics, do they?
Well, some people like to say they do. I mean, you've got the certified ethical hacker, but
yeah, but that's different. That's not like general morality.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it's the only thing that came to mind. No,
you need an ethical sysadmin certification, right?
And not all sysadmins are ethical. I mean, just like any job, you have, you've got doctors who go through this whole, do no harm thing, and then you find out later they're killing people on the side, or they're ignoring patients for other patients, or whatever. You have people who are just not good people. They exist all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the world is full of terrible people.
years ago, you may remember this. Years ago, Google had an employee that they ended up firing and probably got arrested. I don't know exactly what happened, but he was a Gmail admin who was going through people's email.
I think I do remember this.
Yeah. and he got caught, and he doesn't do that anymore. He may be sitting in jail. I don't remember what happened to him, but
I mean, all the time you hear about, I should say on some other podcasts that I listen to, every now and then you hear about, that disgruntled sysadmin that did this or did that after he was terminated or after he left, right? There was one recently, I forget the details, but he basically, he retained access to something, their exchange system, I think it was.
Right.
After he left the company. And he was using that to, I think, feed information to his new employer, who was a competitor of his old employer. Right? So it's like, that's like obvious unethical stuff. Yeah, I think I heard it on Defensive Security. So you probably heard it.
Those guys again.
Those guys, I keep bringing them up. I'm sorry. So, yeah.
It's a good podcast. Go listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard the same one. But yeah, there've been a lot of them. You hear a lot of those different stories on different security podcasts. I mean, it can go even worse than that. There was the IT administrator for a school district close to us. I forget what school district it was. Somewhere in PA. Who had installed.
I remember. I think I know where you're
going. Installed special software on the laptops. They were all MacBooks apparently. That bypassed the hardware light for the camera, so that little green light that comes on when your camera is on. So his reasoning that he gave was that this way, if the laptops were stolen or they suspected the students of abusing them, they could flip the camera on and see what was going on.
This was labeled as some sort of security suite so that administrators could track down stolen laptops. But yeah, he was using it to spy on freaking kids.
And right. So allegedly, because I don't remember
had like exactly pictures of little girls in their underwear. It was like disgusting stuff.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this they found a whole bunch of stuff on the drives of all the students in various states of undress and everything else. So I mean, there are absolutely people who will do this. Part of this comes down to trust. I mean, you as an IT admin, if you're in charge of other admins, part of your responsibility is to make sure that you can trust these people and they're not going to do these things. Whether that's actually part of your job description or not. I mean, for me, like, I don't know that that's necessarily my part of what I have to do as the lead, but I do it anyway.
So flip that around. I know that, I mean, you're closer to being a manager or supervisor than I am. You've been in more of those sort of roles than I have.
Yep.
How do you flip that around to, I'm hiring a new sysadmin? How do I figure out if I can trust this guy? You just base that on work history and whether they left their last employer on good terms. Like, how do you know that this guy's not going to burn you? I guess that's a really hard thing to answer.
It is.
So if we can figure this out, we'll be rich. Come on.
Yeah. So part of it is part of it is gut. We make sure that we're hiring people that fit in with how with our culture and how we want our culture to be. So we spend a lot of time talking to them. And because of the role that I'm in and because of the industry that I'm in, we actually do background checks as well. So
yeah, I guess that would help.
Yeah.
Background checks.
So my understanding is the college does background checks as well, but I couldn't answer that for certain. I don't know.
Honestly,
I've heard both sides of that.
I'm really not sure. I don't know if they did a background check on me or not when I was hired.
I never
it might be a newer thing that I'm not that didn't.
Yeah, I never received anything, but I was told that people are getting background checks. So I don't know. So we definitely do background checks.
I've only been directly involved in hiring like 2 people, and that was at my last job.
Right.
Like, I've had input in hiring people at the college, but it's never been my choice. Right. At my last job, I was the senior network administrator, which was basically a sysadmin with networking If it had a CPU,
a sysadmin who knew what Cat 5 was.
Yeah, if it had a CPU in that place, it was my job to make sure it worked. Anyway, I had a lot more input in hiring folks, and I think there were 2 or 3 admins that I helped hire, and either luck or gut, I don't know. It worked out pretty well. We never had any trust problems anyway. We had some stability problems with just about every one of them, but I think that's just the area that we're in and whatever. But
yeah, well, so it depends on the job as well. So you're in education. I would expect that background checks would be something that's fairly normal. I mean, you're higher ed, so maybe not so much. I'm not sure where the line is crossed there.
K-12, you need a background check to interview.
Absolutely. In some industries, I'm in finance, we require background checks. I don't know if everybody in finance does. This is my first foray there. So if you get into like DoD or defense or government contractor, you're almost guaranteed to need a background check of some sort. But then if you work for an ISP, probably not.
Yeah, and I mean ISPs have access to a lot of data.
They can, yeah, they absolutely can.
They could, yeah.
So it really depends on your job. Where exactly you're working. But like I said, for me, I take it as part of my own responsibility to make sure that people that I'm hiring or recommending to be hired are ethical, moral people. Now, I have hired people who are ethical and moral and are still assholes, but it happens. But that doesn't mean they're going to end up breaking the law. They're just jerks. So, and
that happens. That happens anywhere.
Yep.
That happens with any interaction with another human being. You may run into a jerk. That's just the way it is.
So
I don't know where else to go with access to sensitive data. I mean, I'm sure there are controls that could be put in place to better audit and monitor access that administrators have to such data.
Auditing controls are completely useless unless you actually audit them.
Well, yeah, depending. Like if it's just there and kept in an archive of some sort, I'd imagine that it has some use in like a court of law.
Yeah, right? I mean there's that, but I mean if you're actually going to be active about this sort of stuff,
yeah,
and you really need to be auditing. And I mean, we have a lot of logs that aren't audited in real time yet, but I'm also working with a team of 2, so
yeah, I mean that requires people,
priorities.
Yeah, to make that sort of
sometimes
stuff happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's other ways to do things as well. I mean, we use a piece of software, where I used to use a piece of software elsewhere called OSIC that does log monitoring and reactions and stuff. So there's a lot of different logging software. We use other stuff now that can be used to send alerts like, hey, this is out of the ordinary. I should tell someone. And getting those things set up and making sure that they're running is great. And obviously, if you're the sysadmin and you're the one that's doing the bad thing and you're the only one that gets alerts, sort of pointless. I mean, you're just going to go, yep, I did that, and erase the log.
Yeah.
But it may be worth, looking at, is there another audience that can be looking at these logs as well? So is there a non-sysadmin function? So like a risk officer or, somebody else who can look at alerts from these sort of things, on a fairly regular basis. You got to make it kind of not so chatty. Otherwise they won't look at it at all. But if you can set something like that up, and then a year down the road, you've moved on to another job and they hire a new sysadmin and it ends up catching that new sysadmin or whatever. I mean, these are things that can be done to increase the security around private data and make sure that it's not being abused. Because, I mean, you may not be there forever. You may be somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that could lead into a whole other topic of making sure that your job doesn't depend on you. there's a tricky balance there, right?
Yeah, that's always an interesting balance.
If your job doesn't depend on you anymore, then why are you still there, right?
Well, there's that, and then there's the whole thought of they can't possibly fire me. I'm too valuable. They can't run this without me.
Yeah, right.
Spoiler alert, they can and they will. So
yep, nobody is too valuable. I have found that out the hard way, not from myself, but from other folks who've been let go.
Yep.
It's yeah.
I was one of them. I don't know that I ever had illusions to thinking that I was
trying to approach that from a I'm not necessarily talking about only you.
Oh no, I've known other people.
There was one other case in my history where my assistant was let go because he got flaky. Because life got in the way and there was a misunderstanding, and that's all. It wasn't that he was a bad guy, but
yep.
I mean, he was definitely an asset to the team, and then all of a sudden he was gone, and then I'm like, great, now I got to take care of my job and his, because it was just the two of us.
Yeah,
and it was similar when you were let go. It was like you carried a pretty big burden for the network team, and all of a sudden it was just gone, and there was this void, and we had to figure out what the hell to do about it. Yep. But I mean, it sucks, but you get through it. So nobody's irreplaceable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the other aspect of sensitive data is user privacy, which is something we also wanted to try to cover tonight. So I think I already know the answer to this, but how do you feel about user privacy?
Look, if they have something to hide, obviously they're doing something wrong. So
yeah, right.
Why should they need privacy?
So I mean, I've always stood the ground that our users' data is our users' data at the college.
Yep.
Right. Now, I get that in enterprise it's a little different, because the data that should be traversing an enterprise network should be enterprise related. It should be related to the business that you're doing. Right. The college is a little different. I mean, I think I've used this phrase in the past on the podcast, that it's like a hotel wrapped with an enterprise, or an enterprise wrapped in a hotel.
Yeah,
right.
So the whole enterprise thing gets tricky. So yes, the data traversing the network should be enterprise data. However, I do find it concerning, maybe, that the enterprise, or a lot of enterprises, reserve the right to dive into your email at a moment's notice and read all of your email and do whatever they want with it.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're talking about, user@company.com's email, I mean, I don't know if I disagree with that.
I do,
because you shouldn't, in my opinion anyway, as an email administrator, you shouldn't be using your corporate email account as a personal means of conversation. Right? Even if it's...
See, I don't know that I agree with that.
Yeah?
I have coworkers. I have to communicate with them. Sometimes you do that over email.
Yeah.
Look, if the boss is being a jerk that day and I want to, rant about that in an email to a coworker, I'm going to do that. And look,
so here's the thing. If it's not something that you would openly discuss around the water cooler, it probably shouldn't be in an email.
I would absolutely discuss it around the water cooler, but the boss doesn't hang around the water cooler.
But other people do, and they'll hear what you're saying, and that could get back to the boss.
That's why it's an email with everybody on it. But you get my point here. Like, they're just because...
So you're the reply all guy?
Yeah, I'm the reply all guy. So I agree that in an enterprise setting, if something comes up that requires email access, so if I'm on vacation and they can't get a hold of me, and I have the client information and it's really important, I'm the only one that has it and it's in my email, that they can dive into my email and get it, right? Like, I understand that, and that's fine. I get that. I'm not going to be overly happy with it. I'll probably kick myself for not passing that info on, but it happens. What bothers me is that they reserve the right to, regardless of what's going on. I just feel like going through and reading all of Nate's email today. I'm an enterprise. I'm the CEO. Yeah, I can do that. And that's not something that happens often.
That's kind of over a line there.
That's what I'm saying. There is a line. That's the point. There is a line.
But I don't know. I can also see the enterprise's view of what's their data.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, right. I mean, if it's a conversation that traversed their mail server and their mail server is solely there for you to conduct business with their customers and their vendors and other employees, then there shouldn't be anything to hide in there. It's not like it's your personal email account where, you know, you're trying to make dates and trying to, you know, talk to your wife or, you know, whatever it is that you're doing in your personal life.
Understood.
Right. That shouldn't be in your corporate email.
No, understood. I you know.
Now, like in the case of the college, right, we obviously have residents who live on campus and may or may not be using their college email to interact with other students. I mean, that's exactly what they're there for. They're there to encourage communication amongst the students. So there is no, in my opinion, there's no expectation that the data that traverses the mail system that I have to manage is college related. Right. So in that case, and even if you don't use the student example, if you use, you know, professors who are doing, you know, professory work, research work and whatnot, that's all in the educational community, as you're aware, is all very protected stuff.
Yep.
Right? You know, they don't want that data to get out, and you know, before they release that book they're writing or whatever it is that they're doing or their research that they're continuing. So in that case, I feel like email is actually a pretty sensitive medium, right?
I would agree with that.
And I could say the same thing for an ISP.
Yeah.
You know, because ISP's email is literally all or majority of it is personal email. It's just like that Gmail, you know, admin who was reading people's email.
Yep.
Right? That's not cool. Flat bottom line. This discussion has come up more than once, and we may have covered it when we talked about cloud early on in the life of this podcast.
Yes.
That I feel like, so the discussion has come up. What if your email's in the cloud and that data gets breached? There I go, hitting my microphone again. And that data gets breached, right? The data that's breached is somehow sensitive, right? And the answer is always, oh, well, we just have insurance that covers that sort of thing. We have lawyers that make sure that the college's name is clean and we're okay. Yep. Right? I'm like, well, okay. But if that's my kid going to the college that I work at and it's her data that's been lost, it still has an impact on her life.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it's part of my responsibility to make sure that little Susie and little Johnny have a right to privacy at the college. Right?
Sure.
So, I mean, that's sort of the standpoint that I take when it comes to user privacy, and whether it's email or file share data or, you know, whatever it is that they're storing. I feel like it's stuff that the general admin should not be looking at. And while there aren't many controls in place that would prevent me from going to find that data, I do my best not to see it. I do my best to not go look at it, not go find it.
Yep. Going back to your original example, there are reasons that you need to be in there to check things.
Yes. So, I mean, there's
and in the process of checking those things, I mean, I'm trying to remember how this worked, but you have to go to the main inbox in order to get to the settings.
Yeah. So depending on how you approach it, I mean, there's two main reasons why that data may not be solely in the possession of the end user. One of them is legal circumstances where we've been subpoenaed or asked to preserve that data.
Sure.
Right? And that, I mean, the only people looking at that data in that case, I wouldn't look at it, for example, right? So I'm asked to preserve an email account. I go and I create an archive of the account. And in the process of creating an archive, I'm not even in the user's account. Right. So there's no chance for me to even look at that data. Now, sure, that archive has to then traverse, from the mail server to whatever archival device I'm putting it on. And I could theoretically have the chance of looking inside of the archive, but I don't. Right? Because it comes back down to the level of trust that I feel that my employer has placed on me.
Right.
But the other example is, little Johnny's account got compromised because he gave his password to a fish. Right. And now he's sending out spam.
What kind of fish? Like a bass or salmon or?
I prefer trout because they have a less gamey taste to them.
Okay.
But anyway, then you went and derailed me.
Yeah, it's fun. I went fishing and I caught you.
Yeah, right. So, little Johnny gave his password out to a fisherman, spelled with a PH instead of an F. And now little Johnny's account is sending a bunch of loan scams out to the rest of the world, or even the rest of the college's employees or faculty or staff or students. And we need to stop that for two reasons. One is someone has access to little Johnny's account, and whether the attacker knows it or not, with that access, they can get all kinds of damaging information about little Johnny.
Yep.
Right? And they're sending a bunch of spam, which damages the reputation of the email system that I'm managing. And damn it, I take that seriously.
Only because it's such a pain in the ass.
Only because it's such a pain in the ass when we get blacklisted. So anyway, yes, in order to fix that sort of thing, yeah, there are ways to get at most of the things that I would need to modify from an administrative perspective without having to actually log into the person's mailbox. And mind you, I'm not saying like I go and get the user's password somehow. This is an administrative function of the email system that we run. As an administrator, I can literally like impersonate a user. I don't know if impersonate's the right word, but that's essentially what it comes in.
That's what they use is impersonate. A lot of systems do this now.
Yeah. So, I mean, the very fact that it's a built-in function of the email system we run makes me feel like there's a good reason for this.
Yep.
And to me, this is the good reason. Like, I'm not going to go in and send email as little Johnny. The fisher's already doing that. Right? So yes, it means I need to access little Johnny's account, but I'm not going in there to read his email. At the very most, when it comes to an email perspective, what I'm doing is looking to see if there's 10,000 bounce messages from AOL or whatever in his inbox saying, you're sending to invalid users, or looking at his sent items to see if the fish that I think he's sending is in there. Right. And I'm not saying I'm even reading the messages. I'm glancing over subject lines and date stamps to see if it looks like, there's a smoking gun there.
But so what happens if you're looking over the sent items or the stuff that's in the inbox and you come across a, let's say, a questionable subject line? So something along the lines of a drug deal or, a planned murder or whatever.
So, illegal.
You
probably know as well as I do that unless an email, even in the case of an encrypted email, the subject line is clear text.
Yes.
And that's all I'm looking at.
No, I know.
I'm not opening messages.
No,
I'm not.
Understood.
I'm looking at subject, to and from, date stamp. That's it. Just the headers, just the header you see in the inbox.
It is a question though. So if I mean, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm asking. If you
I guess that is
a questionable subject line, do you report something like that, or you just say, "I'm not supposed to be in here. I'm only here for this thing." Oh well. Oh, moral quandary.
I mean, I can say that whether I've just been lucky or I've been obtuse to such things, I've never run into that problem, and I hope that I never do. If I did, I'm not sure what I would do with it. Because if I were to go and report that, doesn't that come down to like, what were you doing in my mailbox?
Well, yeah, but you have a valid reason for being in there. That's why I'm curious. Like,
yeah, right.
So I mean, take it from the perspective of somebody who's working on a computer that is broken for whatever reason. Even staying with the school. So
we had a story about this, didn't we? Where Best Buy was like an informant for the FBI.
Yeah. But that
they found nastiness.
They were literally they were tearing down to like look at erase.
Oh, that's right. They were looking at like undelete data. Yeah.
But if say the desktop person at the college gets a report or finds out that there's a machine sending spam or something and goes and checks it out, and it's an administrator's computer, and he hops on there and he's all digging through it trying to stop the thing from sending spam, and runs across like, I don't know, kitty porn or something else that's illegal. I'm not sure what else I can think of here, but whatever. I mean, at that point, it's sort of like he's just doing his job.
Matter so much.
Right. He's just doing his job, but he's come across something that is not legal and needs to be reported. What do you do? So,
I mean, that's actually a pretty good question, and I honestly don't know what the answer is.
So, I think the proper answer is you report it, but
if there are any lawyers listening, let us know how that sort of thing should be dealt with.
No, we should probably throw a header on the podcast about jobs and not representative and all that if lawyers are listening.
Oh yeah. We don't want lawyers to go get us in trouble. Our thoughts and opinions are ours and ours alone, and not those of our employers.
Boy, you listen to Defensive Sec a lot.
Yeah. Well, they're not the only podcast I've heard that on.
Yeah. So
I've heard podcasts that are even greener than ours that already have a disclaimer at the beginning.
Yeah.
We haven't done that because I don't feel like there's a need. But
I don't tell anybody where I work, so I'm ashamed.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to user privacy. Back to user privacy. I mean, for what I do everything. I try to make sure that I'm doing what I can. If I have to access something, I'm doing it in such a way that I'm not going to see everything. I'm trying to access only those bits and pieces. Now I know when you're dealing with some of the mail stuff, they'll set up forwarding addresses and other things. I don't know how much of that is programmatically accessible outside of the user interface or how easy it is.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is. I mean, all of it is technically. It's a question of how well you can hit it.
Right.
Obviously, the user interface is the thing that's designed to make these changes, and I'm sure you're familiar with the whole, like, oh well, when I changed this thing in the UI, it made 8 changes that all support each other. When I change it via the CLI, I make 1 change, and all those other 7 supporting changes, I have to know to go change back.
Right. Yep.
Right?
Yep. Been there, done that, broken the system. I mean, I would never break the system.
Yeah, that never happens. So I mean, at any rate, yes. The way, so we're, as you're aware, but the listeners may not be, we're running Zimbra as our email system. Zimbra's admin interface is an Ajax web UI that simply makes SOAP requests back to the core Zimbra service, right? That entire SOAP API is accessible via command line on any of the Zimbra boxes. So yes, any change you can make via either the end user webmail interface, the preferences configuration, or the admin interface, you should be able to do via the command line or via SOAP requests.
Right.
So yeah, they should all be, things that can be corrected, maybe even via a script. And to be honest, I'd love it if I could just say, fix Zimbra account.sh space username. And it just resets everything. But we haven't gotten to that point yet because there are so many little fiddly bits.
You write it in SH? Why not like Python or Perl? Maybe they have API bindings.
Maybe. I'm going to write it in
Go.
Instead of I was going to say, instead of attribution dice, I need popular language of choice dice.
Yeah, I've got my dice here too. So, just in case. I don't have attribution dice though. I've got what's this? Project management dice and engineering dice.
If I could get to the bottom of my bag here. Damn it.
Bottom of your bag. I don't think those are the right dice. They have lots of sides, but they don't have any attribution on them.
They have lots of sides and numbers. And now all we have to do is take whichever size dice we want.
This is too
and have a table. Have a table that lines up numbers to languages. We can make this happen.
You could write a script.
But if I have a script, it's not as satisfying.
Now, if you had the dice, you could figure out what language to write the script in.
It's not as satisfying as saying it's written in 7. What does 7 equate to?
Oh, that might actually be a language. I don't know.
Is there a language called 7? It's written in Lisp.
Ugh. Ouch. So
anyway,
all right. So now that we're now that we've beaten it enough that we're starting to roll dice,
I think we've gone a bit afield here, a little far afield.
All right.
All right. So somewhere I have a list of things that I want to say after we finish our main. Here it is. So yeah, I mean, privacy is a big deal. I think it's always been a big deal for me, whether it's popular or not. And with the early move to the cloud, it seemed like privacy was like an afterthought. I don't know. I don't know if you got that feeling as well, because I know that in the early days of the cloud, you were as much of an advocate for keeping things local as I was.
And I still am for certain things.
And yeah, I mean, that my opinion has been changing lately. Mainly because I feel like the cloud has matured enough that there are plenty of things that are perfectly safe in the cloud. Right. So, I mean, I've even brought up the idea of, the thing that I have fought so, tooth and nail over for the past, 9-8 years that I've been at the college. Higher ed has this movement where everyone slowly but surely is outsourcing their email to Gmail, because Google Apps, or G Suite for education, is, I think, literally free. And that's attractive, right? But for so long, I have fought that because I didn't feel like it was a good enough service. I didn't feel like it was a secure enough service. I didn't feel like it was a private enough service. And there were a lot of people that shared my opinion on that, except for a handful of people that were opposed to it. But slowly, yeah, right, you raise your hand. But slowly but surely, the attraction of not having to deal with an email system and not having to deal with compromised accounts and not having to deal with all of the minutia that goes along with running mail, and how well Gmail is honestly working for other institutions. I keep asking myself, why am I putting myself through this?
So the spammers are wearing you down.
I don't know that it's just that. I feel like, there's no innovation to be had in email. There's nothing interesting to be done with email. The only thing that I'm fighting for is the data is still in our data center. I can see it. I can go and, protect it in whatever way that I can.
Yep.
Right? Like, that's it. That's the only fight that's left to fight. And the longer things go between, headlines that say Gmail is leaking your data, the harder it gets to fight that fight. And it's getting really attractive to just say, like, you know what? Let Google handle it. And I'm tired of it.
And it makes it so much easier for those 3-letter agencies to be able to get at your data. Because now they just hack one place.
Right. So, to be honest, I am less scared of 3-letter agencies than I am of, just general malicious folks who want to get a hold of the data. Right. 3-letter agencies don't even come into my realm. I'm more worried about, the defamation of character suit against poor Johnny when he gets out in the real world and, some bad guy has gotten a hold of his email from back when he was in college doing all of his bingers.
Right.
Like, that's my real concern. I don't care if the NSA has a copy of those emails, because the NSA isn't going to try to blackmail Johnny.
That you know of.
That I know of. Until the NSA gets their data leaked, and then someone gets a hold of Johnny's emails that the NSA was holding on to.
Yep.
So, anyway.
Alrighty.
Email, it's hard.
Email is hard.
Self-hosted is important.
And don't look at your user stuff.
Don't look at your user stuff, whether it's email or HR data or whatever.
All right. I think we've kept our audience long enough.
Yeah. Even though still no one's listening live. Come on, guys. And this time I'm sure, but I'm actually looking at the chat room. There's no one there talking. Last time I made the mistake of saying that, and then there was somebody there.
Well, that was bad. It's late.
It is late.
All right.
So yeah, I think we've covered that. All right. So I guess that's it for tonight. I have made us a new URL for YouTube because of that terrible MD5 string or whatever you want to call it that gets you to our channel. So if you go to ironsysadmin.com/YouTube, you will now get redirected to our YouTube channel where you can watch us live or see old episodes up back to like episode 11 or 12 when we started doing this. You know, the whole YouTube thing. You can also find us on iTunes or ironsysadmin.com. You can give us money on Patreon, which we now have 3 Patreon patrons, which is awesome. Very thankful to anyone who wants to give us money to do this thing. You can also find us on Twitter or Facebook. Substitute Twitter or Facebook.com/ironsysadmin, and you'll find us. I think I said iTunes already, Stitcher. Those are all places you can go listen to us. Please leave us feedback, because feedback tells us what we should do. I really would like to know what people think of the show.
Yeah, and if you have topics that you want us to talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
If there's topics you don't want us to talk about.
I've been stretching to find topics lately. I don't know if I'd say it on the air or not.
No, I mean, there's other stuff to talk about. We're just having
Yeah. I mean, we could start going into technical segments or something.
We can do that.
If anybody's interested in such things, give us a. I mean, I don't know if someone can just throw technical ideas at us and we can just run with it. It's going to have to be things we're familiar with. Otherwise, we're going to look like idiots.
That's okay. I look like an idiot anyway, so.
We could look like idiots.
All right.
So I think that would be it. So good night, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you.
And Jason, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Well, got to be grateful, right?
I guess.
Right.
Anyway. Thanks for joining us, Nate.
I'm not just joining. I'm like running the damn show. Okay.
Thanks for producing, Nate.
Thanks for producing, running, whatever. All right. I think it's time for the outro. The tablet which I use for a soundboard literally fell over when I pushed the button.
That all sorts of crackled and everything too. So
that's the noise that you heard. All right. Good night, everybody.